how that's moving along. The one bit of good news, I think, is to point out that the number of NHS checks being offered has actually gone up. The uptake has remained quite low. So again, the disparity between the percentage being offered them and the percentage actually taking them up, I'd like to know a little bit more about why there's the disparity between the two. So I will find out that information and I will update you on that. In terms of the breastfeeding, again, you know, the numbers have slipped downwards, as you rightly point out. They're 10% below where we would like that to be. Obviously, we have we deliver education to new mothers through both health visiting and Strong Start, which works in some of our nurseries as well. And I think clearly more work needs to be done to improve on that, and I will also get an update for you on that. But one thing I noticed in the information box said that actually poverty is increasing breastfeeding. So, you know, it kind of makes sense, doesn't it, that when it costs a lot of money to buy infant formula and so on, more mothers are then taking up breastfeeding because of the cost. So I think capitalising on that is going to be a good thing to do, because breastfeeding is good for babies and good for mothers. So absolutely, Councillor Lee, I will find out a bit more about that and get back to you on both of those issues. Thank you for raising them.
Thank you very much, Councillor Harrison. Councillor Brackenbury.
Thank you, Chair. Well, as normal, I welcome the performance indicators because they are such a valuable indication of the overall health of North Northamptonshire Council. I welcome the performance indicators in the place and economy and the planning section, particularly the uptick in performance in the areas that are highlighted. It is useful to have these because we are, as you know, Chair, carrying out a review of planning services in North Northamptonshire, and having the data that we have is very useful to inform the work that's going on in transforming North Northamptonshire's planning service into the most efficient service that it can be. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Councillor Brackenbury. So I come back to Councillor Bunday if he just wanted to wrap up and propose the report.
Thank you, Chair. Nothing more to say, really, but I'm happy to propose the report, the recommendations at paragraph 3.
Okay, thank you very much. Can I have a seconder for that? Councillor Brackenbury, thank you very much. So the recommendations are set out on page 18 of the agenda pack, and they've been moved and seconded. Can I have a show of hands in favour, please? Jolly good, thank you very much. So we now move on to item 6, security service contract. I would like to invite Councillor Cocoon to address the meeting. You have a maximum of 3 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Just a few pardon me, just a few queries I have, Chair, about the. Sorry, I got the right one. Yeah, a couple of queries. It says that we spend around 370k per annum, and we're looking to standardise and introduce a new main contractor, preferably a single contractor. This quite clearly is going to take some considerable time. I would wonder if Councillor Lawman has maybe some time scale to which he's looking to finalise this. As I say, it is going to take some time. I would also like to ask Councillor Lawman if any consideration has been given to staffing with the new contractor when we get to that stage, to ensure that terms and conditions of employment will be fair, decent and reasonable for all staff who come on. Because good terms and conditions, of course, are more conducive to stability in employment, and stability in employment saves us money also over a transient workforce. That's all. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Councillor Cocoon. So I'd like to invite Councillor Graham Lawman now to introduce the report, please.
Thank you, Chairman. This report seeks to authorise a procurement process for security provision at council-owned and operated buildings and sites across the authority. The proposed contract will provide safety for our own staff, opening and closing of properties, as well as control of our assets. Currently, we have a range of methods of delivering this through 5 contracts and in-house provision, all with varying costs and standards, but we now need to harmonise our security whilst providing value for money, reliability, consistency and resilience, as well as flexibility as we rationalise our assets. As the largest contract expires in March this year, there is a need to procure at the first opportunity, and the report estimates this will take 6 months. In the meantime, interim arrangements are being made with current providers. Officers conducted a comprehensive SWOT analysis between the various options of an in-house team, using an established framework, incorporating within a facilities management contract or a competitive tendering exercise. This SWOT analysis clearly demonstrated procurement or framework, but the former offered a more flexible answer. And I have a copy of the SWOT analysis if any councillor would like it. The report recommends the last option, as it enables us to scope the standards to our requirements, which we have the opportunity to devise, ensure flexibility to achieve potential future savings, and the contractor will invest in the service and its staff and meet our commitments to achieving carbon net zero, as well as providing monitoring and accountability. Discussion on the options is had in paragraphs 5.6, 5.7 and 5.8. A benefit of this option is to ensure that our current providers are able to bid, and this may support local companies and staff. It also enables the area to be broken into lots if appropriate. A 3-year plus 1-year contract is proposed, hopefully within the current budgets. So I've answered the Councillor Cohen about the 6 months, and all contracts in the Council would have an oversight of the terms and conditions and requiring them to achieve our aims towards net zero. That's a standard thing our procurement process would do. So I commend this report to the Council.
Thank you very much. Members, is there any comments in relation to this report? No. Okay, so the report's been moved by Councillor Lorman. Can I look for someone to second the report, please? Councillor Howell, thank you very much. The recommendations are on page 52 of the agenda pack. They've been moved and seconded. Can I have a show of hands in favour, please? Thank you very much. Okay, we move on to item 7, concessionary travel. I believe Councillor Lorman leaves the room here and Councillor Edwards comes back in. We'll just wait for Councillor Edwards to reappear. Who's presenting this report? Of course, that's it, yeah. It's like magic doors. Okay, so I would like to invite Councillor Dorothy Maxwell to address the meeting for a maximum of 3 minutes.
Good morning. Concessionary travel reimbursement 2023-2024. I welcome this report, which enables buses to keep on helping people travel to work, hospital appointments or personal use. Option A is a choice that we should use. Will the government help towards the cost of 2.707 million, or will this be left to NNC? Can we train more drivers to help these buses? It would help them run on time. Why not let concessionary fare travel before 9:30, or is this an issue? Could it be 8:30? Can we ask for smaller buses to travel to areas where there's no bus service in future? Rushden Hopper, the Addingtons. Sadly, we are reliant on cars because of the times of the buses. This would change if they were on time. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Maxwell. So I would, at this point, because Councillor Lorman's stepped out of the meeting due to an interest, I'm going to ask Councillor Bunday to introduce the report. And if any questions which you've just raised, I'm sure our excellent George Candler will be able to answer your questions after. So, Lloyd, if you could introduce the report, please.
Thank you, Chair. This is a very similar report to one that I actually presented this time last year, and members will be aware that those eligible for an older person's or disabled person's bus pass can benefit from free travel on buses across Northamptonshire after 9:30 in the morning. This is an important scheme enabling and encouraging the use of public transport. Under this national concessionary scheme, the Council has a statutory duty to reimburse bus operators for the income they have foregone because of providing concessionary fares. Since the start of COVID-19 pandemic, concessionary bus travel has been significantly below pre-COVID levels as pass holders were disproportionately affected. In consequence, the government has previously asked councils to reimburse operators at above actual levels. The government has now asked the council to continue to provide a guaranteed level of reimbursement through 2023-24 financial year. However, this does depend upon the government laying secondary legislation before Parliament to permit this, which they have confirmed they intend to do. In Northamptonshire, operators were reimbursed at 100% of pre-COVID levels until the 30th of September 2022 and have since been reimbursed at 90% of pre-COVID levels. Despite this, the number of journeys using concessionary fares is currently at 65 to 70% of the pre-COVID levels, emphasising the need for the scheme. NNC has pledged to continue to support bus operators. This report recommends that reimbursement continues at 90% of pre-COVID levels until the 31st of March 2024. The aim is to provide consistent funding for operators in the hope that it will minimise the likelihood of reduction to bus services. The options and reasons for the recommendations are in paragraph 5 and the cost in paragraph 7. The Council will continue to work with operators to protect local bus services, which are so important to enable residents to travel by public transport. I hope the Executive feel able to agree the recommendation so I can confirm arrangements with the bus operators as soon as possible. I'm happy to propose the recommendation of paragraph 3, Chair.
Okay, thank you very much, Councillor Bunday. I'm just going to bring in George Candler just to answer some of those questions that were raised before, and we can then just open up the debate.
Thank you, Chair. So in terms for, I think the first question, Councillor Maxwell, was around training for drivers. That's certainly something that we can consider. Obviously, a big chunk of this money goes to Stagecoach, who are the primary provider in Northamptonshire, and we meet with them regularly. Indeed, we've got a meeting with them this morning as we speak. So I don't think that's necessarily the specific issue. I think it's, in terms of training for drivers, it may be more around the community offer that's provided, and certainly something that we're looking to develop this year is demand responsive transportation to fill some of the gaps that we know exist across some of the more rural areas of Northamptonshire. In terms of broadening the time to an earlier slot, what that would do is that would obviously bring in more people to use the buses when they're already reasonably busy at that time anyway, with people commuting to and from work, and is also likely to increase the potential costs of reimbursement as well. So that's why the sort of national time of 9:30 a.m., which is fairly recognised across the industry, is used. In terms of smaller buses, again, that would probably be aimed more at the community offer, and obviously most of those do tend to be smaller, and obviously what we're looking to try and encourage now is a shift to electric provision as well. I think the smaller buses is again something that we want to explore with the demand responsive transport element going forward, and clearly Stagecoach position the size of their buses according to the business demand that they're serving across North and Northamptonshire. So hopefully that answers your questions, but happy to take supplementary outside of the meeting, Councillor Maxwell.
Thank you very much for that clarification. Councillor Pentland.
Thank you, Chair, and I'm supportive of this paper that's come forward. The reasons Councillor Bunday set out show why it is important in order to maintain the bus services that we've got locally, but also the importance was set out by Councillor Maxwell in terms of enabling people to go to and from work, to appointments, and to generally engage in their community. But more than that, as has also been laid out, it's important in terms of sustainability and providing people with an option for a more sustainable mode of transport, which we're really looking to encourage over the coming months and years to hopefully grow that base of people that are using the bus services locally. So supportive of it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Pentland. Councillor Brackenbury.
Thank you, Chair. I very much support what Councillor Pentland just said. And also I do support this paper and the recommendations. Basically, we have a clear disconnect between the amount of journeys that are being made post-COVID for people in receipt of concessionary fares. It is important and it's recognised by government, but it's important to maintain subsidy to the bus network, because if we were to drop the subsidy, it would put pressure on the availability, the timing and the routing of bus services. And we really are in a large, quite rural area, and some of these bus services are a lifeline to communities. So I do very much support maintaining the status quo at 90%.
Thank you very much, Councillor Brackenbury. Just looking around the room, there's no further comments. So I'd like to go back to Councillor Bunday just to wrap up on this and move the paper.
Thank you, Chair. I think as the two speakers have both said, this does provide a service, and in that a good news story for our residents. And by providing security for our bus operators, it also provides security for the council that we can actually deliver on the service that we want to for our residents. So with that, Chair, I'm happy to propose the recommendation of paragraph 3.
Jolly good. Thank you very much, Councillor Bunday. So can I look for someone to second that? Councillor Brackenbury, thank you very much. So the recommendations are set out on page 60 of your agenda packs. They've been moved and seconded. Can I have a show of hands in favour, please? Thank you very much. So we now move on to item 8, the Public Health and NHSE Integrated Sexual Health and HIV Services. So I'd like to invite Councillor Dorothy Maxwell to address the meeting. Dorothy Maxwell, you have a maximum of 3 minutes.
Public health and NHSE sexual health and HIV services. This report clearly defines what will happen this year. My question is, do we have specialist nurses going into schools, sixth form, and giving advice on sexual matters, abortions and contraception? Whilst this is free to get contraception, if schools are not involved, this leaves a programme of children being left behind. Confidentiality is important for children aged 15 and over. We must make sure that they are aware of this. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Maxwell. So I'd like to invite Councillor Harrison to introduce the report, please.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Councillor Maxwell, for your question. This service doesn't cover education in schools as far as I'm aware. As I'm sure you'll know, schools have a subject, PHSE, where children are taught about matters relating to sex and relationships and how to protect themselves, consent, and all of those kinds of issues. I'm not sure if those lessons continue into sixth form, but of course, they are. Children are made aware of free contraception services outside of school, and I'm sure they're able to speak to school nurses about those issues. But these are services that sit outside of the education system. The purpose of the document is to provide an update on the Northamptonshire Integrated Sexual Health Service contract and to seek approval to extend it for 1 + 1 year, in line with the current option to extend clause. The Sexual Health Service is a mandatory service funded through the Public Health Ring-Fence Grant. The current service is provided by Northamptonshire Healthcare NHS Foundation Trust, GPs and pharmacies across the county as an open access service. HIV treatment services are commissioned by NHS England. In 2017, Northamptonshire County Council gave approval for Section 75 arrangements with NHS England to commission an integrated sexual health service which offers preventative, diagnostic and treatment services, including contraceptive and sexually transmitted infection services and diagnosis of HIV, and to improve equity of access across the county. North Northamptonshire Council now holds the commissioning responsibility for this service on behalf of West Northamptonshire Council. So there's one contract covering both authorities and covering the whole of Northamptonshire. The initial contract period commenced on the 1st of April 2019 and is due to expire this month on the 31st of March. The contract has a 2-year option to extend, which would subsequently end the arrangement on the 31st of March 2025. The cost of the service is detailed at 2.3. The full 2 years the contract is worth 18.512 million. The contribution from the NHS for that 2-year extension would be 8.934 million. And the contribution from the two authorities would be, so let me just find it, 4.655 million from North Northants Council and 4.923 million from West Northants Council. Work has begun with the service to review the areas that require further development and improvement, such as young people's sexual health outreach clinics, Councillor Maxwell, and to refresh the current performance monitoring schedule, matching these to the new national service specification, which is being updated against national guidance and will include targets and baselines. Service improvement plans have been introduced to closely monitor for improvement in activity. Evaluation frameworks will be introduced to measure the impact of the service, and this will be benchmarked against regional and statistical neighbours. This work will also inform a more strategic vision going forward. At 4.4, you will see a breakdown of the services included in this contract that are paid for by North and West Public Health Grant and the HIV treatment elements paid for by NHS England. HIV treatment services are currently delivered by NHFT in full alignment, staff, accommodation and reporting systems with the Integrated Sexual Health Services commissioned by the Council. Disruption of this existing alignment would be expected to increase costs, impact on recruitment and retention of high-quality clinical staff, and reduce accessibility for service users, with the subsequent potential impact of increasing the numbers of people with HIV who access treatment at a late stage of disease progression. Extending the contract will allow the Council and the Northamptonshire Integrated Care System to review the profile of need in North Northamptonshire for sexual health and HIV services, as well as to creatively look at other delivery options. Following this review, needs assessment and benchmarking period, a procurement specification can be developed ready to re-procure the service that suits the North Northamptonshire population. At 4.15, you can see the performance report of the current service. Service improvement plans have been developed and performance will be closely monitored. It's recommended that the executive delegate authority to the executive member for adults' health and wellbeing in consultation with the Director of Public Health and Executive Director of Finance and Performance to extend the Section 75 agreement for up to 2 years with partners NHS England to jointly commission the integrated sexual health and HIV service from April 2023 to March 2025, and to agree to extend the current Northamptonshire Integrated Sexual Health and HIV contract with Northamptonshire NHS Foundation Trust.
Councillor Harrison, thank you very much for that comprehensive report. Members, do we have any comments? Councillor Pentland.
Thank you, Chair. Supportive of this paper coming forward for the reasons Councillor Harrison set out. It's important that we're able to support people with their sexual health at the early stages as well, to ensure that you don't have further knock-ons both in terms of social and economic costs if you haven't got these in place. So we're supportive of this.
Thank you very much, Councillor Pendant. Any other comments? Councillor Brackenbury.
Thank you, Chair. And I again thank Councillor Harrison for her extremely comprehensive introduction to this report. You're quite right. I mean, it gives the 2-year extension gives everybody time to take stock, to take breath after the COVID pandemic hangover, which still lingers, I think, in a lot of the NHS. And after that, then perhaps there is an opportunity to reset if that is what is needed at the time in 2 years' time. So, I mean, I very much support the paper. Thank Councillor Harrison for her introduction, and support the recommendation that we extend the contract for 2 years. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Brackenbury. Just looking, there's no further comments from members. So I'd like to just go back to you, Councillor Harrison, just to wrap up and move the report, and I will look for a seconder for you.
Thank you. I move the report.
Thank you, Councillor Harrison. Can I have a seconder, please, for that? Councillor Binley, thank you very much. So the recommendations are on page 68 and 69 of the agenda pack and have been moved and seconded. Please, can I have a show of hands in favour? Unanimous, Chair. Fantastic, thank you very much. So we now move on to item 9, and that's the housing development former Grange Methodist Church site in Kettering. And I would like to invite Councillor Lynn Buckingham to address the meeting for a maximum of 3 minutes. Councillor Buckingham.
Thank you very much. Good morning, and thank you for the opportunity to speak. It comes at no surprise that I welcome this report. I welcome the development. I welcome its focus on bringing, social housing to the fore, and hopefully the start of an ongoing development programme. And I've read in papers elsewhere where we're exploring some of those thoughts and ideas, including teams and partnerships with social housing providers, developers, etc. I think the one downside is the increase in the budget, which means that each property, if you took the budget and split it between 8, is 271,625 per property. And I know that it's a necessary evil in terms of where we are at the moment with our economy and costs rising and rising. So whilst I understand the cost, it still doesn't sit well. But thank you very much, and the development is very welcome. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Buckingham, and I welcome the fact that you welcome our report. Councillor Lee, you have 3 minutes to speak as well.
Thank you, Chair. The development of these 8 homes was first approved in January 2021. Yes, it is in a residential area subject to vandalism, and it is attracting antisocial behaviour, as the report says. For all those reasons, this development should have been started a lot sooner before now. It has been on the forward programme on several occasions and it was then quietly dropped. I welcome its return. It will now cost an additional 313,000, as my colleague said. What this area really needs are several things, but especially a multi-use games area for sports, which would cost £300,000. The remaining £13,000 could have gone to the coordinator of the Grange Primary Hub. 3 of you visited the Grange Primary Hub and you were asked for money for a new coordinator, and MP Philip Hollowbone supported that. But there is no money, and it is a shame then that the delay has cost us money. Secondly, the drawing on page 93 is very bleak. I don't see any green here. It's a purely utilitarian complex of houses. I'm not surprised that Kettering Town Council is concerned about the biodiversity on this site, because it looks as if the area will just be concreted over. Grass, trees and bushes should not be a luxury for more affluent developments. On page 93, I see the outline of 1 tree in black and 2 trees in green, which I assume are existing trees, but they're so close to the boundary line that I fear the intention is to chop them down. There's no legend to tell me what's going to happen. Yes, I support the recommendations in this report. These homes are badly needed, and I hope that the project will be well managed and that it will progress well within the timeline. Please add some greenery to prevent this from being a concrete jungle. Thank you.
Councillor Lee, thank you very much for your comments. I'd like to invite Councillor Robin Carter to address the meeting, please.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I totally agree with this. It's a lovely report. I fully support this. As you're aware, the Grange Church has been derelict for a few years now. It's looking very sorry for itself. So, yes, I would like to have new houses built there for the community, definitely. I would like to see probably a bit more on the solar panels, probably charging points, which would be good, especially for if we're building new houses. And on, yes, the increase has gone up, fair enough, because of the cost of materials. Are we fixing the contractor to a certain price, which would be good? And if we could, as my colleague said about the Grange Community Hub, could we tap into the Builders Funds to support this? Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Councillor Carter. I'd now like to invite Councillor Cahoon to come and address the meeting, please.
Thank you, Chair. Pardon me. I thoroughly welcome this report. It's a great idea all round, with a couple of reservations as stated by previous councillors. However, like Councillor Lee, I query why this has taken so long in the making, and indeed isn't made yet. Why 2 years later is it no further on from its initial suggestion? And is the budget increase of £313,000 enough? It seems a bit low to me, but the report itself is quite adamant in its statement of £313,000. I wonder where that comes from. Point 28 says it is proposed to procure a construction contractor, etc. One would ask, shouldn't this already have been done 2 years down the line? On point 44, it says that a recent introduction requirement for a biodiversity net gain assessment be carried out, and this is expected early in 2023. I would ask the councillor if this has been completed. An issue I have around this, Chair, is one, the 313k. Is that a sort of positive, or is it an estimate? And also, a worry I have is comparing this to the Cannock Road development in Corby, which is no further on. It just seems endless, this Cannock Road thing. We're getting nowhere with it. We've been complaining for a long, long time about it, and nothing is happening. We have a couple of families with very disabled children who really need these properties. As I say, it seems to me they're no further on. I drove round yesterday and there seems no further development on it. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. So I would like to now invite Councillor Matt Binley to introduce the report, please.
Thank you, Chair. I will cover off the points raised after the report because I do think the report actually answers a number of those questions. So this report is to seek approval for the Executive to amend the budget for the redevelopment of the former Grange Methodist Church site in Stamford Road, Kettering. A budget increase of £313,000 is required into the additional £1,860,000 approved by the Executive of the former Kettering Borough Council back in January 2021. To be able to complete this redevelopment, which will take the total required to £2,173,000. This is subject to planning approval. This is following the redesign of the site to meet planning requirements as noted in 4.4 of the report, to subsequently be able to cover the cost, the general build cost, inflation since January 2021. As has already been mentioned to a degree, the development brings back into use a brownfield site in a left-behind area. It is also a site that's been a focal point of crime and antisocial behaviour. So by developing the site, the crime and antisocial behaviour in the area will be reduced. The development consists of 8 new affordable homes that become part of the housing revenue account. 4 one-bedroom and 2 two-bedroom bungalows, plus 2 three-bedroom houses. 6 of the 8 homes will be accessible for disabled tenants, made up of 4 disabled access bungalows and 2 specially designed 3-bedroom houses with disabled access to the ground floor. These types of properties are difficult to secure via public sector developers. The costs for building these types of properties are higher, but 5.2 does explain this in further detail. I will also point out that these properties will also be constructed to an EPC rating of B or above. It is proposed to secure a construction contractor via an open tender process, which ensures greater competition. The projected timeframe is actually fully detailed in section 6.4. There is sufficient budget available within the HRA Housing Development Capital Budget, and 40% of the funds will come from the right to buy receipts. The capital costs are covered through property rentals. So, Chair, I will just like to make and move the recommendation, made out in section 3.1A to C. Just to note the slight typo on my copy, which reads in B, I think it's supposed to be the, not he. And for the reasons set out in 3.2. And I'll just pick up some of the points raised by members. First of all, Councillor Buckingham, thank you very much for your comments. You, of course, you also raised the increase in budget, rightly so. And of course, on that front, bearing in mind the meeting that we have next week to discuss the budget, of course, the proposal is that there will be potentially a 7% increase in rental income for social housing, and of course, therefore, it makes it all relative that, you know, whilst we might have an increase in the build costs, of course, there will be an increase in the rental income potentially coming from that, which offsets that. So again, thank you, Councillor Buckingham, for your comments. Councillor Lee, you mentioned about using money elsewhere. You can't do that. You talked about community hub, etc. It's the housing revenue account, HRA. You can't move money anywhere else within the council. We couldn't pass anything on. It's a ring-fenced account. It would be unlawful for us to do so. But I fully appreciate your comments with regards to wanting to do more within the community, etc. But we would have to look at that as a council from alternative pots of money. You also raised a number of concerns around biodiversity, of course, and I think Councillor Colquhoun mentions it later on with regards to biodiversity net gain. Of course, that is formed as part of planning. So officers will be working on that, should, of course, we go ahead and approve this today, based on the recommendations, that they will start working on the biodiversity net gain afterwards. You also said about the trees. I fully understand what you're saying, but if you go and look at some of our developments, such as recent ones that have been carried out in Kettering, places such as Gavin Close, you will see the amount of greenery that our teams put in at these social housing developments. And I can also see on the plans, I can actually see some trees that are existing on site that are actually being left there. So, you know, I thank you for your point. We do need to do as much as we can to make the places as enjoyable as possible for our residents, and not just as a concrete jungle, as you phrased it. Councillor Carter, again, thank you very much for your supportive comments. I know that you've been a huge ambassador for driving forward, and to steal Councillor Harrison's earlier phrase, for holding my feet to the fire over this. And I know that you've rightly raised with regards to energy efficiency, things like solar panels, heat pumps, etc. As the report states, this is being developed to a standard of EPC B or above, but further detail can be gained from officers as to exactly what that will entail, and I've asked them to get back to you on that front. Councillor Colquhoun, you raised a number of points. I'll try and cover them all for you. You said, well, raised the point whether the money would be enough. Yes, it is. Our officers have carried out with our partners a full formal cost plan which covers everything, including contingency and looking at potential risks. It is a very extensive piece of work that goes on in the background, and there are reasons that we don't publish that for obvious reasons, and the fact that we're going to an open tender process to make sure it is as competitive as possible for this council. Why 2 years? I know that was raised by yourself and also by other councillors. Well, 4.4 does state that there was an issue with regards to planning. There was an objection from a local resident. The plans, the design of the site had to be revised and done in agreement with that resident to make sure that it was done within their requirement, so that we then didn't get an objection during planning and have a whole host of issues, and then have to kick the can further down the road because we've not been able to develop it because of planning application problems. So that is why it's taken a bit of time to get that over the line. I know from speaking to officers that they did have challenges speaking to the resident, especially as we quoted January 2021. We were still in COVID, so of course we had challenges with regards to going around and speaking to them. So that's one of the reasons as to why we struggled there. I believe, albeit I may have missed it, I know you were talking about other developments in Corby. Was it Cannock Road that you were talking about? So Cannock Road, of course, has been through this executive. It has been approved. That is also going through an open tender process. Of course, that's the reason that ground has not been broken there, is because it is all still on schedule. But that open tender process does take a bit of time to go through, but the time frame was fully published in the executive papers back then. But it is all moving ahead of schedule, albeit, again, that's another site that I too share frustrations with. You know, had that come before NNC, I think we'd probably be dealing with that site very, very differently rather than keeping the pre-existing structure. But I hope that I've commented and covered everything for you, I hope. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you very much, Councillor Binley, and what a comprehensive response you've given, and in light of your recent addition to your family as well, so congratulations on that. You don't look very tired, though. Not yet, indeed. Okay, so we're going to go to some debate from members on this. So, Councillor Harrison, I know you wanted to speak on this.
Yes, thank you, Chair. You know, I really support this paper. It's so important that we develop specialist housing that is disabled accessible. We don't have enough of it in Northamptonshire, so this is really welcome. I think, like everybody, you know, we never like to see costs escalating, but given the inflation that is rampant in the country at the moment, although slightly coming down, it's understandable that the costs have gone up. So, I'm happy to support this, and will be very pleased to see this kind of development in Kettering and the one that's coming forward in Cannock Road as well. I did want to just gently correct Councillor Lee on an assertion she made earlier on. It is quite correct that three of us went to Grange Community Hub a couple of weeks ago, and we were asked to see if we could find some funding to help them to continue to run it. We didn't say there was no money. We said we'd go away and investigate what options there might be to help Grange Community Hub, and I can assure you that I've already started that work, and will hopefully be able to report. I can't promise you it'll be positive, but I'm investigating what might be done. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Harrison. Thank you for the clarification on that point as well. Most useful. Councillor Edwards.
Thank you, Chair. And actually, Councillor Harrison has covered the part about the visit that we had a couple of weeks ago, and I was one of the other three that attended. But I just want to say about this site, and having known, you know, from Kettering, know this area very well, and after speaking to residents and certainly businesses around that area, they are so pleased that finally something is being done with this area. It has been an eyesore for the past few years. It's vandalism and antisocial behaviour surrounding it. And it's really positive that bungalows are being built for some of our most needed people in our community. So this is a really positive story, and so I look forward to its fruition.
Thank you very much, Councillor Edwards. Councillor Pentland.
Thank you, Chair. Much like my colleagues, supportive of this and think we should support it going forward. It seems to have a number of merits to the development, including, as Councillor Harrison spoke about, the accessibility, which is really important. I think we've noted the comments around biodiversity and the importance of that, and I'm sure that officers and other colleagues will take note of that as this progresses forward, subject to us approving it. So I think it's a good use of the site, redeveloping somewhere that has already been used to make it really a useful space for people.
Thank you, Councillor Pentland. Councillor Lorman.
Thank you, Chairman. Well, I join my colleagues in welcoming this report, and particularly the fact we're able to build some accessible properties very much needed, and particularly their bungalows involved. Developers don't seem to build bungalows these days, but there's certainly a demand. And also, I note that there's the opportunity for local SME builders to have a go at the tender, which is important. It's something we said we'd support local businesses. And of course, it's nice to see an area that tidied up and made useful. But I did want to pick up one thing that was said by one of the speakers. I would expect, I don't think it's gone through planning yet, but I would expect a planning condition to include for the ducting and the wiring for an electric vehicle charging point. We can't specify the actual connection because the person living there has the right to do that, but I would expect that to be included in the planning conditions anyway. It's the standard thing we do.
Thank you very much, Councillor Lorman. Councillor Bunday.
Thank you, Chair. Just want to pick up on the suggestion that this part of Kettering is a concrete jungle. Quite honestly, Stamford Road is a very leafy road and is probably credit to the planners when the Grange estate was first thought out many, many, many years ago as an area where there are a lot of trees, a lot of greenery, a lot of green patches. I think Stamford Road is quite an attractive road. They're part of it that sadly could be improved, but I wouldn't call it a concrete jungle.
Thank you very much, Councillor Bunday. So I'm going to go back to Councillor Binley just to wrap up. I know you've moved the moved the paper, so we will look for a seconder, but if you want to wrap up first.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I'll keep it brief so it's not too comprehensive. I'd just like to thank colleagues for their comments and their support in this. So, as you've said, Chair, I've already moved it, so happy to go ahead with those recommendations.
Thank you very much, Councillor Binley. So Councillor Binley has moved the report. Councillor Harrison has seconded. The recommendations are set out on page 81 of your agenda packs. Can I have a show of hands in favour, please? Jolly good. So we now move on to item 10, Highways and Transport Block Funding 22 to 25. And I'd like to invite Councillor Lorman to introduce the report.
Thank you, Chairman. Each year, the Department of Transport advises councils of annual allocations of capital funding for the maintenance and improvement of the highway network as per our local transport plan. This time last year, they wrote and informed us of a 3-year allocation, so this is the second year of that. The elements are highways maintenance block, totalling 3.735 million, intended for capital maintenance of our assets to a safe standard based on our asset and network management plans. An incentive element of 0.934 million, which members should note is subject to performance. A potholes fund of 3.735 million for pothole repairs, does what it says on the tin. An integrated transport block of 1.364 million, which members should be aware is adjusted from last year's figure of 1.551 due to a DFT miscalculation and is intended for minor safety improvements and improving traffic flows, as well as creating cycling and footpath improvements towards active travel. The money is then allocated to schemes according to a priority list calculated by need through a matrix based on the Northamptonshire Transportation Plan, based upon input from highways officers, local residents, parish and town councils and councillors. This report asks that we accept the allocation and approve spending to the total of 9.768 million on the network, which is important as it affects every resident who uses the roads and paths of the authority. I commend this report to the Executive and the recommendations in 3.1.
Thank you very much, Councillor Lorman. I'd like to look round to members. Is there any comments in relation to this report? Councillor Pentland.
Thank you, Chair. Particularly supportive of the integrated transport block with regard to walking and cycling networks. The conversations that we have as part of our EAP flag this as being a priority for local residents over and over, so it is important that we have that funding there and continue to build on those, which I know there's lots of work going on in order to do that. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you very much, Councillor Pentland. There's no other comments, so Councillor Lorman, you have moved the report, and can I look for someone to second the report, please? Councillor Howes, thank you very much. So the report has been moved and seconded, and the recommendations are on page 146 to 147 of your agenda pack. Can I have a show of hands in favour, please? Thank you very much. So, before we move on to item 11, I know our friendly Lib Dem ex-councillor will be watching this, and he made comments at our last executive, #bursting. However, I think we'll have a 10-minute comfort break at this point. Thank you very much. meeting and take our seats, please. That would be good, so we can move on to item, item 11, the determination of admission arrangements for local authority maintained community and voluntary controlled schools in North Northamptonshire for the 2024 intakes. And I would like to invite Councillor Dorothy Maxwell to address the meeting, please.
Hello, I come to you this morning about gifted and talented children on page 170, whose parents may wish their child to go to a school which is not in their catchment area and may need to travel to the school because the talent they have in a certain subject. We know that while we send students go to special schools, this is either in the county or outside the county, and their means of getting there is paid for by NNC regardless. Children I speak for today may have the ability, but due to the funding, cannot access certain schools, even if they've been accepted at that school. If you choose to go to a school outside your catchment area, you have to pay to get there. Private schools may offer scholarships, but you still have to pay travel and other expenses. Some excellent state schools accommodate gifted and talented children, but they still have to pay their travel. We still do not recognise these children who may need help, but are from poorer backgrounds, and therefore nothing is done to help them. Sadly, we do not have the funds to help them. This is equally goes on in primary and secondary schools. I believe more should be done to help these children from poorer backgrounds whose parents would like them to access these schools but do not have the same opportunities. I'm talking about the child who may take GCSEs or A-levels early because they're gifted, and the school can accommodate this. Sadly, this does not happen. Some children like musicians, but again, this costs money. If you saw last night's programme on the piano, this illustrates this point. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Maxwell. And I'm sure Councillor Edwards will comment on your many questions in your speech there. So on that, I would like to invite Councillor Edwards to introduce the report, please.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Councillor Maxwell, as ever, for your questions and comments. It is much appreciated. And I completely understand what you're saying about gifted and talented. But the problem is, if you send a child out to another school that's not in their catchment area, no matter if they're gifted or talented or not, that they have to pay their transport fees. So it would be unfair to take on a gifted and talented child, but not another child. So unfortunately, at the moment, it's certainly not there for us to be able to do that. You highlighted funds and budgets, and it's certainly not within the budget to be able to do that. But I do know a lot of schools that do offer scholarships, certainly for extremely talented children in certain areas. So that may be a way forward in doing that. And there are some charities out there as well that offer bursaries to children to look at things like transport and getting them there. So this report is about the admissions arrangements for the 2024 intakes. And it hasn't gone out for consultation because it's exactly the same as last year's, but it is a legal requirement that we have to publish it and debate it. There is no change from last year, which is why it hasn't gone out to consultation. But the school admissions is one of my biggest that I get in my inbox because some people don't understand all how we do it, and this report I have to say, is a very good report and highlights how you can do it at the beginning, how you can do it midway, what the criteria is if the school is full, which children have priority over others. And so I'm going to make sure that every council member has a copy of this report as well, because that will alleviate any issues that they may have. But the report is there in front of you, and I would ask you to accept it.
Thank you, Councillor Edwards. Any comments from members on this report? Councillor Howell.
Yeah, thank you. Excuse me. Thank you, Councillor Edwards. You're absolutely right. This is a great report, and it does highlight exactly how members of the public, our residents, can gain the school places for their children. And I think, you know, it's about communication, isn't it, sometimes? Making sure that this document is accessible to everybody and pointing people in the right direction so they know exactly how to apply for those positions so it doesn't inhibit them in the future. I think that's absolutely worth its weight in gold. This is, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Howell, for that. Any other comments from members? No, jolly good. So I know that Councillor Edwards moved the report. Can I have a look for a seconder, please? Councillor Binley, thank you very much. And the recommendations are set out on page 154 of your agenda pack, and they've been seconded as well. So can I have a show of hands in favour, please? Thank you very much. So we now move on to item 12, the Local Authority Housing Fund Refugee Resettlement. And I would like to invite Councillor Dorothy Maxwell. You have a maximum of 3 minutes to speak, Councillor Maxwell.
I welcome this report that we've given the Ukrainian people houses and support, and 374 and 229 sponsored in the past. In 4.13, NNC is expected to match part the funding required from the capital of 40%. Will we ever get this back? In 4.14, we acquired 30 homes through this programme. Will these homes come into our council stock when they're no longer needed? And in 4.20, will these properties be near schools, shops and employment? In 4.23, who will pay for the additional staff resources? Will it be NNC or the government? Will someone be earmarked to make sure that these people are looked after and shown around, not just left to fend themselves? Lastly, these people will need furniture, bedding, clothing. Who will pay for this? That's my final question. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Councillor Maxwell. And I'm sure Councillor Binley will answer some of your questions posed in a while. But before that, I'd like to invite Councillor Lynn Buckingham to address the meeting.
Good morning again. And thank you again for the opportunity. Like Councillor Maxwell, I welcome this report. As many of you know, I've been trying to fight for homes that will be able to be used for temporary accommodation for the Ukraine and Afghan refugees for some time. I think the report, although tells a story, it doesn't tell the story of the 3.7 million that is needed as match funding being repurposed from the homeless prevention service. And the impact of that money not being there in the budget for the future, especially when so much is happening in our communities in terms of homelessness. So there's no impact of that within this report, and I think there needs to be. And I think there needs to be some way of finding this money. I know that the government has given you so much per person to spend on the refugees from Ukraine and Afghanistan, and wondered if some of that can be used, or finding out what impact this is going to have on our homeless communities in the future. Thank you.
Councillor Buckingham, thank you very much for that. So I'd now like to invite Councillor Binley to introduce the report, please.
Thank you, Chair. So this report seeks approval from this executive to enter into an agreement with the Department for Levelling Up, Housing and Communities to acquire 30 homes for Afghan and Ukrainian refugees. This is aimed at providing longer-term accommodation for those that need it. As has already been mentioned, to unlock this funding, DLUC announced back in 22nd of December 2022 that we must match fund. Therefore, NNC would need to repurpose capital funding already committed within the Homeless Prevention Programme. This funding is needed to take pressure off the homeless services within NNC. As a council, we committed to supporting 10 Afghan families in bridging hotels and sponsorship placements for Ukrainians fleeing their war-torn country. Families have struggled to move out of the bridging hotels due to the sizes of some of the families, and some sponsorships have come to an end, which has had a knock-on effect by resulting in the use of provision of the more expensive temporary nightly paid accommodation. Of the 374 Ukrainian guests that went into 229 sponsorship homes within NNC, only 181 guests remain, as they've either returned home, moved out of the area, made their own arrangements, or have been supported by our teams into the private rented sector. I just would like to put on record our thanks to the generous people of Northamptonshire who did invite those individuals fleeing war into their own homes within Northamptonshire. And we would require to repurpose 3.711 million, and 7.12 in the report explains this in further detail, as 50 to 60% would be required from NNC as match funding. The funding from DLUC would be £3,234,385, and therefore with the NNC funding and that from DLUC, the total budget would be £6.965 million. This would result in 30 properties that will become part of the NNC temporary accommodation stock for now, as detailed in 4.19. The breakdown of the required 30 properties would consist of 2 one-bedrooms, 20 two-bedrooms, 4 three-bedrooms, and 4 four-bedroom properties. From a buying perspective, we currently have a favourable housing market conditions-wise. Properties will be sourced on the open market, and the council will also look to buy back any suitable ex-right-to-buy properties which are subject to first refusal. Again, further details of this are explained in the report under 4.15. The property purchases will be focused in the towns of Kettering, Corby, Wellingborough and Rushden, so that people are located near to local amenities. Any properties purchased from developers will not be counted towards Section 106 affordable home allocations, so it will be in addition to. On this, I'm certain that probably Councillor Harrison may have further comments to add, as of course I know she's been extensively involved in the 2 relevant refugee programmes. Chair, I'll move the recommendations now and also come back and comment on some of the points raised by our speakers today. So I'd like to move the recommendations made out in 3.1 A to C, for the reasons set out in 3.2 of the report. I welcome Councillor Maxwell's welcoming of this report. With regards to temporary accommodation, again does bring in an income in inverted commas, as in we do get money for it, so ultimately that is one of the ways that we will potentially get some of the costs back. You asked as to whether this would potentially come into our own housing stock. It may. I know this is mentioned in the report. It may. At this point, we are not committing to anything, and officers will be exploring that possibility at a later date. However, for now, this will be part of our temporary accommodation stock, which, to be fair, is also vitally needed. Staffing costs, you raised about that. That, of course, will be a mixture of both, sort of the NNC and also the government funding. I know that you raised bedding and clothing, but I'm sure not to drop Councillor Harrison in it, but she'll probably be raising that herself with regards to the support that we have been providing to Ukrainian and Afghan refugees, I hasten to add. Councillor Buckingham, thank you very much for your supportive comments as well with regards to the report. And as you say, you've been fighting for this. The piece around this about repurposing, and I will pick up, I know that there were some negative comments in the media about our stretched homeless prevention fund. Councillor Bunday will probably know this as the man that holds the purse strings. We don't have a stretched homeless prevention fund. And the reason we don't have a stretched homeless prevention fund is because of the absolute sterling work our housing options and homeless team do within this council. We are very, very fortunate with the hard work that's put in with regards to our low use of temporary accommodation. We've already had the figures presented to us today. Those figures are in there. It is literally just over the 200 mark. The team work incredibly hard making sure that we get in as early as possible before a duty is owed to people so that we prevent them from being made homeless wherever we possibly can. And when, unfortunately, that doesn't happen, the team, again, work incredibly hard to make sure that people are moved to other properties as soon as possible so that they are not in that higher paid temporary accommodation. To answer your comment, Councillor Buckingham, this homeless prevention fund that will be repurposed, it's still going into temporary accommodation, which is vitally important and is part of what we were looking at doing anyway when it came to temporary accommodation and having the money there to purchase that. So, in effect, we are only slightly repurposing it. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Councillor Binley. I'm just looking around the room. Councillor Harrison, I know you want to speak.
Thank you, Chair. Just to pick up on some of the points made by the speakers. Obviously, this paper is very specifically about purchasing homes for temporary accommodation, and 30 new homes for Northamptonshire is going to make a really big difference, because at the moment, as our refugees become homeless, as some of them are, it is increasing pressure on the services there, as we have a responsibility to house people who become homeless. So this will reduce the stress on that service. You asked some questions that sort of are slightly different to what's being brought forward in this paper, and that's the wraparound support, particularly for the Homes for Ukraine programme, and the fact that there is money attached to each Ukrainian refugee who comes and settles in Northamptonshire. As I hope you're aware from previous papers, that money is being used for various different reasons. You will have noticed that some of our Ukrainian families have already found them, or we've helped them to find accommodation in the private rented sector, and we're able to use some of that support fund to help them with certain aspects of that. The team puts in a lot of support around our families in helping them to get the benefits that they're entitled to and get them set up in their communities with English lessons and things like that. I can tell you that I will be bringing a paper to I believe, to the next executive, which will detail further how we're going to use some of those funds. And that will further support getting those Ukrainian people into settled accommodation. So this paper is only part of the picture. So I just say watch that space, and you will learn more next month about further support through the Homes for Ukraine programme. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Harrison. Just looking around, Councillor Lorman. Thank you, Chair. Well, I really welcome we're able to do this for these people who have joined us in such tragic circumstances. And it's been one thing I just wanted to comment. One of the most important things, and I think Councillor Harrison just alluded to, is the support network. And that includes family support network. And I did notice in paragraph 4.15 that Councillor Binley mentioned some of the parts in there, that we will be looking to the developers of new build housing. And of course, if we could have a small enclave, is perhaps the wrong word, of 3 or 4 together, that would provide a local network for these people to have people who spoke their language and had the same customs. So that's something that hopefully officers can look at. Thank you. Councillor Lorman, thank you very much. So I'm just looking around, there's no further hands shown. So Councillor Bundy, Councillor Binley, I'm just coming back to you just to sum up briefly. I know you've moved the report and I will look for a seconder in a minute, but if you just wanted to sum up and we will move on.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor Harrison, for your comments, because, of course, I know this is very closely aligned to the hard work that yourself and the team have been doing in this area. Just moving on to Councillor Lorman's comments, he's absolutely right, and that is something that I've spoken to officers about. Now, they are currently exploring all options at this point in time, but that's very much something whereby, of course, if we're purchasing 30 properties, whereby we potentially can use the purchasing power as a result, and at the same time, of course, put them together whereby there is that support network between each other. So thank you very much, and I welcome your comments. And thank you, Chair. As I said, I've moved the recommendations, so thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Binley. Can I have a seconder? Clearly. Councillor Harrison, can I have a show of hands in favours, please? Unanimous, Chair. Thank you very much. So we move on. Item 13, Capital Out1 22-23, Jaffa Out1 as of P9. And I would like to invite Councillor Lynn Buckingham to address the meeting for a maximum of 3 minutes.
Thank you. Mine is an opportunistic speech this morning. I do not fully understand the outturns and, the intricacies behind it. But looking through the report, what struck me was the amount of projects that don't have a budget to start with. My passion, as many people around this table know, is around our waterways and making sure that they're maintained right the way through. And in many places in this outturn budget, there is not a budget for our waterways, and I think there needs to be. So please excuse me for taking the opportunity to put a plea in for a budget for our streams and waterways, because it's such an important part of our area. Our rivers are really important, and our brooks and streams, if you look in our local areas, are desperately in need of investment. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Buckingham. I'd like to invite Councillor Anne Lee to address the meeting. You have a maximum of 3 minutes.
Thank you, Chair. I second that plea for money to maintain the waterways and brooks. Can I ask the portfolio holder to go to page 216 and 5.3? The range of schemes delivered or in progress during 2022-2023 includes, and then there is a list, and it includes the Alfred East Museum extension. The museum is the one that is considered beyond repair. The library is the one where only 25% of the books are out at the moment, and there have been buckets there for years to catch the rain. The Alfred East Museum is the one that was due to open on the 10th of February, and there's no news on what will happen. Can I ask, since we know now that the roof needs extensive repairs, can we claim money from the surveyor who surveyed the building before the extension was built? Because surely someone has made an error there, and money should have been invested in repairing the roofs as part of the works. Because now the library, the works are still ongoing, the art gallery cannot reopen, or maybe it can. I look forward to that date. And the library still doesn't have public Wi-Fi 3 weeks after we were told you would try and get it repaired by. It's still, the library staff have not been told when they can expect the public Wi-Fi to be restored, which is badly needed. But there is a cost implication of the roof. And I just wonder, there's nothing in here about it, it's an omission. But the fact that it's called an Alfred East Museum extension here shows that there's just no real grip on the situation of what's what and what we can expect for the future. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Lee. I would like to now invite Councillor Bunday to introduce the report, please.
Thank you, Chair. Commenting on the comments from our speakers, there is some brooks and waterways funding within the budget. It only looks like a modest amount, but there's probably other things that are hidden in other places. What I would say is that as finance portfolio holder, I oversee the budget, but the various different projects comes from the various different directorates. So I would refer back to those directorates, and if they bring projects forward and those projects are agreed and they have a business case, they stack up, then that will be done. Likewise, Councillor Lee, the Wi-Fi I will chase up because that does come under my portfolio. As far as the other things you mentioned, they are things that I know are being discussed, but again, they are being discussed in various directorates and not in the actual finance directorate. Ultimately, these things will have to be paid for, so funding will have to be found, and that then is something that's brought to the finance department, but we don't actually set the projects going. Now my IT stopped. This report outlines the capital forecast for the General Fund Committed Capital Programme, the General Fund Capital Pool and the HRA Capital Programme. The table at paragraph 5.2 shows the General Fund Capital Programme for 22-23. As members will be aware, as part of the budget setting process for 23-24, we have asked directorates to revisit their forecasts. So of the £63.8 million estimated slippage and underspend that's reported, £43.8 million has been reviewed or reprofiled into the 23-24 capital programme or into the capital pool. Paragraph 5.3 does give examples of schemes delivered or in progress during the financial year. As we approach the end of this financial year, it is not envisaged that there will be further calls this year from the capital pool into the capital programme. Focus has also been on those projects that have grant funding in order to ensure that any grant terms and conditions are met and minimise the potential risk of repayment and/or loss of grant. The HRA capital programme shows a revised budget of £28.9 million. The outturn forecast is showing an underspend of some £17.1 million. This is shown in the table at paragraph 5.8. A significant proportion of this underspend is due to delays in finalising new contractual arrangements, implications arising from architecture plans and reprofiling new developments. With that, Chair, I'm happy to propose the recommendations of paragraph 3.
Thank you very much, Councillor Bunday, for introducing that report. So I'm now going to go to members for some comments. Councillor Howell.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I'd just like to address a couple of issues that Councillor Lee raised, and thank you for your questions or statements, whichever. The library roof at Kettering Library was actually not included in the original scope of works for the extension, so it actually had nothing to do with the extended works. So obviously, subsequently to the works commencing, there have been issues raised about the state of the roof, and we have a team of officers working really hard together in all the different directorates to address those issues. But as Councillor Bundy said, you know, these projects, especially when they're heritage projects, you know, and you're talking about things like Collyweston Stone and things like that, they always raise major concerns and the costs are quite substantial. So, as I've said, there are a team of officers working at speed to overcome the issues that were raised, but we are looking at mitigation. As for the museum, the roof issues there, again, heritage building. We are exploring funding streams for the repair of that roof and through possibly Heritage Lottery Fund and things like that. So, yet again, these are inherited issues and we are looking to address them. That's as much as I can say about them at the moment, because obviously we do have to find the money and we do have to go out and we do have to look at procurement and we have to look at all of those issues. You mentioned about the library staff not being able to tell you what was going on, and actually that's right. The library staff are not a source of information on these issues, and I would ask members to direct any questions that they have through the correct channels as opposed to speaking to the library staff who are there trying to do their job. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Councillor Howell. Councillor Brackenbury.
Thank you, Chair. And like you, Councillor Buckingham, I have a considerable interest in waterways and streams, and I welcome you're bringing it up in this item. I would point out that much management of the rivers and streams and waterways in North Northamptonshire is carried out by the Environment Agency rather than us, and a lot of the spending will be coming through them and through Anglian Water and through other sources. So also this is capital, and a lot of the upkeep will be in various revenue budgets. So I'm happy to take up your query offline with you, and perhaps we can just make sure that we're coming to a common landing.
Thank you very much, Councillor Brackenbury. Councillor Lorman.
Thank you, Chairman. Well, I was going to say this report just demonstrates the vast range of capital projects that we're undertaking at the minute. But I want to emphasise, I was going to emphasise what Councillor Brackenbury just said. The Environment Agency and Anglian Water are often the responsible bodies, and but there are in this report some small capital works that will cover these things and have them absorbed in them. There's some minor works lines and there's a Brooks and Waterways line, as Councillor Bundy said earlier. And of course, there will be some revenue work, as just been mentioned. But one thing I would say, if you have got areas that need doing, then please put them on Street Doctor, and officers will look at them and see whether they are our responsibility, and if not, pass them on to the relevant agency. So please do that, and that's the only way we can know that these problems exist and deal with them.
Absolutely. Good advice there, Councillor Lorman. Thank you for that. So, looking round, there's just no other comments. So, Councillor Bundy, I'll just come back to you briefly just to sum up. I know you've moved the report. I will look for a seconder for you in a minute. Maybe you just wanted to sum up some of those comments or anything else you wish to say.
Thank you, Chair. Obviously, waterways sounds like it's a key thing, so that's something that we will look at. As I say, it is a case that the Finance Department relies on other departments to actually bring forward projects, and those projects will then be considered, and if the business case stacks up and the finances are there, then they will be approved. Thank you, Chair.
No, thank you. So could I look for a seconder for the report, please? Councillor Howell, thank you very much. So the recommendations are set out on page 214 of the agenda pack. They've been moved and seconded. Can I have a show of hands in favour? Thank you. So we now move on to item 14, Capital Programme Update 22-23. And I'd like to invite Councillor Bunday to introduce the report, please.
Thank you, Chair. There are very briefly 3 items on this report this morning. All 3 items have been discussed earlier in this meeting. The Grange development, item 9, the highways and transport block funding, item 10, and the refugee resettlement, item 12. So with that, Chair, I am happy to propose the recommendations at paragraph 3.
Thank you very much, Councillor Bunday. Any comments from members on the report in front of you? No, jolly good. So there has been moved by Councillor Bunday. Can I look for a seconder, please? Councillor Lorman, thank you very much. So the recommendations are set out on page 232 of the agenda pack. They've been moved and seconded. Can I have a show of hands in favour, please? Thank you very much. Okay, so we now move on to item 15, which is the budget forecast 22-23 as of period 9. And again, I would like to invite Councillor Bunday to introduce the report, please.
Thank you, Chair. The purpose of this report is to set out the forecast revenue budget outturn position for 22-23 for the General Fund and the Housing Revenue Account, and sets out the material financial issues identified since the 22-23 budget was set last February 2022, and is based on the income and expenditure as at December 2022, period 9. The forecast outturn for the General Fund is an overspend of some £5.242 million against a net budget of just over £300 million. This is a favourable movement of £510,000 since period 8, where an overspend of 5.752 was reported. The details of movements against the budget are set out in the report and summarised in the table at paragraph 4.3 of the report. There are a number of movements between period 8 and 9, and the main pressures of these include a number of vacant posts within children's services which are being filled by agency staff to enable continuity of service. This is forecast to result in a net pressure of £636,000, which is a movement of £305,000 from period 8. The Children's Trust are reporting a forecast overspend of £12.653 million for period 9, which is an increase of over £900,000 from period 8. The cost to NNC is £5.588 million, which is an increase of £400,000 from period 8. The main savings between period 8 and period 9 include additional rental from the Council's property portfolio of £290,000. The Council has received an additional grant to help meet costs associated with subsidised bus services, and this grant has recently been confirmed and has resulted in additional income of £199,000. The interest receivable is forecast to be £1.1 million above budget, owing to the increase in interest rates. This is an increase of £460,000 to that reported in period 8. And there's a further forecast saving of £100,000 in the internal audit service resulting from the new service delivery model and vacancies carried in year. While the Council's contingency budget was released in period 7 to help offset the in-year overspend position, the Council also has reserves available to call on for any balances remaining. However, it will continue to look to achieve further in-year mitigations in the first instance. The Housing Revenue Account has a forecast overspend of £154,000 against an approved budget of £36.27 million. The HRA has been affected by a number of factors, but the main pressure is due to the application of agreed pay award being higher than budgeted. The details of the movement against budget are set out in the report at section 6. Like many councils, the main issues, risks and unknowns that we continue to face are around the inflationary impact and changes within demand-led services. The Bank of England increased base rate by 0.5% to 4% on the 2nd of February, and this is the 10th consecutive increase since December 2021. The inflation figures for December are slightly lower than November, with the 12-month CPI figure for December being 10.5%, and the 12-month RPI figure for December is again lower at 13.4%. We recognise that it is and will continue to be a challenging time, but we will be working hard to balance our finances whilst protecting vital services, particularly those to our most vulnerable residents. I'm happy to propose the recommendation of paragraph 3, Chair.
Thank you very much, Councillor Bunday. Councillor Harrison.
Excuse me. Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Councillor Bundy, for the report. I would just like to highlight the absolutely excellent work that has been achieved in adult services. If you have a look, we are delivering a balanced budget, and that's through delivering in-year savings in a demand-led service, which, as I'm sure you'll all be aware, is no mean feat. So I'd like to thank David Watts to the left of me. I'd like to thank Zakia Lockhead, Sam Fitzgerald and Matt Jenkinson for the sterling work that they're doing in their portfolio areas. I'd also like to thank the finance team who have been instrumental in helping our team in adult services to plan and set a balanced budget and to enable the delivery of such. This is a really difficult job, as I'm sure you all know, because Councillor Bundy reminds me of it as often as he can. The adult services budget is the largest budget of the council, so it's absolutely vital that we run it well and we deliver great services, but on budget. And I think it's an absolute testament to the team that they've done that. So I'd like to put my thanks on record.
Absolutely. Thank you very much, Councillor Harrison. A demand-led service doesn't always have to overspend, and it's good that you're coming in on budget. So thank you for that. Any other comments from members? Okay, so the report has been moved by Councillor Bunday. I just want to go back to Councillor Bunday just to sort of wrap up. So over to you, Councillor Bunday.
Thank you, Chair. I'd just like to say that when I first took this position on, I had a phone call from somebody who said at every single meeting, remind everybody demand-led services are the risks of this council. And I think Councillor Harrison has summed it up very well. And to be honest with you, I think everybody around this table and the directorates that they represent are doing a sterling job. It is a shame that some of the outside pressures that we have don't reflect the same good work.
Okay, Councillor Bundy, thank you very much. So Councillor Bundy has moved the report. Can I look for someone to second it, please? Councillor Harrison, thank you very much. So the recommendations are set out on page 240 of the agenda pack. They've been moved and seconded. Can I have a show of hands in favour, please? Thank you very much. So I can confirm that we've had no requests to consider any urgent items of business. So that concludes the business on the agenda. I'd like to thank all members, officers and our online viewers on YouTube for your attendance today, and I declare the meeting